Hi everyone, and welcome to St Mary's London Youth Online. If you don't know me, my name is Lisa and I oversee the youth work here at St Mary's. And this week I want to speak about peace. Peace. What do you think of when you think of peace? Do you think of the absence of war, kind of the end to war, a peace treaty between nations? Or do you think of peace of mind? What comes to mind for you? Well, I want to look at the biblical meaning for peace. So in the Old Testament, the word for peace is shalom or shalom, depending on how you want to pronounce it. I'm going to say that word a lot, so say it with me. Shalom. Shalom. Yeah, you're welcome. And in the Greek, in the New Testament, it's eirenne. Shalom and eirenne. They are both words that mean peace, that are translated to peace in the English. But the word shalom and the word eirenne mean something so much greater and richer than our English word peace. It does mean the absence of war and conflict. So in Ecclesiastes chapter 3 verse 8 it says there's a time for war and a time for peace. And the word here is shalom. But it has a much fuller, richer meaning, as I said. So let's consider some of the other places in the Old Testament where this word shalom is used to kind of paint a broader picture of what this word means. In Joshua chapter 8 verse 31, Joshua describes building an altar to God with Shalom Stone. In the NIV translation, our English translation, it says uncut stone. Basically, a Shalom stone is something that is whole. It has no holes or cracks or cuts in it. It is also used to describe building a wall that has no cracks or gaps or bricks missing. So when you read the word peace in the Bible, don't just think of the absence of conflict. Also in your mind, have this idea of wholeness or completeness as well. It's also used to describe a relationship between two parties. In the Old Testament, it can be used to ask or inquire about someone's well-being. For example, in 1 Samuel chapter 17, verse 18, Jesse sends his son David to the battlefield to inquire after the shalom of his brothers. He's asking David to go and see his brothers and see how they're doing. How are they faring? Are they well? In Genesis chapter 43, Joseph, when the brothers come and meet him in Egypt, he inquires after their father's shalom. He wants to know if his father is alive and well. So when you read this word peace in the Old Testament, we should also think of this idea of someone's well-being, wholeness and completeness and well-being. And then later on in the Old Testament, there's a bit of a whistle-stop tour. In 1 Chronicles chapter 12, King David uses shalom in the context of trust and friendship. When he says about the Benjamites, if you come to me in friendship, and the word he uses for friendship here is shalom, to help me, then my heart will knit to you. If you come to me in shalom to help me, then my heart will knit to you. So peace in the Bible doesn't just describe the absence of struggle and conflict, but it also describes the presence of wholeness, completeness, well-being, and right relationship. So how can we have this shalom peace, this rich, whole, restful security? The Bible makes it clear that we cannot create it ourselves. Job says in chapter 25, verse 2, that he, God, makes shalom in his high heaven. God is the maker of shalom. He is the creator of it. But the Bible does make it clear that we can receive this as a gift from God. Psalm 4 verse 8, the psalmist says, I will both lie down and sleep in shalom, for you alone, O Lord, make me lie down in safety. Psalm 29 verse 11, the Lord gives strength to his people, and the Lord blesses his people with peace. And the New Testament, 2 Thessalonians chapter 3 verse 16, now may the Lord of peace himself give you peace at all times. May the Lord of peace himself give you peace at all times and in every way. The Lord be with all of you. These verses, amongst many others, make it clear that shalom peace is a gift from God. How do we receive it then? How do we receive this gift? Well, it's less about how and more about who. An early clue comes in Isaiah chapter 9, verses 5 to 6. It says, "He will be called Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, Everlasting Father, Prince of Peace. Of the greatness of his government and peace there will be no end." This is the prophet Isaiah prophesying about Jesus 700 years before his birth. He is foretelling how Jesus would bring redemption, restoring our relationship with God and making all things well. With Jesus' birth in the New Testament, we see the arrival of eirenne, the Greek word for peace, the equivalent to shalom. Jesus brought shalom or eirenne when he sat at the table of the tax collector Zacchaeus. He brought shalom when he talked to the woman at the well, and instead of bringing judgment and shame, he gave her his grace and his mercy and his forgiveness. Jesus brought his shalom when he reached out and touched the leper, infecting him with his holiness and curing him of his disease. Each individual had their own story, their own set of circumstance. But in each one, Jesus brings his shalom, bringing healing and wholeness and restoring them not only to God, but with the communities that they live in. Jesus transforms brokenness, misery, and isolation to wholeness, well-being, and relationship. And Jesus makes it possible for us also to have this shalom, eirenne peace. In John 14, verse 27, Jesus says, "Peace I leave with you, my peace I give you. I do not give to you as the world gives, so do not let your hearts be troubled and do not be afraid." When you read the word peace in the Bible, don't just think of the absence of conflict, but the presence of wholeness, well-being, and restored relationship. The presence of Jesus. This was made available to us instantly on the cross. And what Jesus did restored us to right relationship with God. And for me, I've had experiences of having this sort of instant peace from God. About 5 years ago, I was really anxious about the idea of becoming a parent. I just couldn't really come to grips with the kind of idea of this huge life change and being responsible for this whole other human, and how I would lose a lot of my freedom. And it was just something that caused a lot of anxiety in me and conflict between me and my husband, who desperately wanted a baby, if I'm really honest. And then someone at church prayed for me, and they had no idea that that was the thing for us. And they prayed for me, and they prayed about God's perfect love casting out all fear, and that I would know the peace of God. And from that moment, I received God's peace about that. Complete peace. I wasn't anxious or worried about it anymore. And as you know now, I have 2 little girls, so, it worked. But sometimes peace isn't just instant. The cross, what Jesus did there, he defeated death and destruction once and for all, but also Jesus, it won't be fully complete until he returns. And sometimes I think peace is instantaneous, and it's something that is worked out. Sometimes we need to continually come back to God and ask and receive their peace. The last month or so actually hasn't been very peaceful in our home. And many of you know we had a break-in our house, and then some other stuff happened that really robbed us of our peace and our kind of, settledness. And so actually for us, my husband Rich and I, we have been listening to worship music regularly, even at night as we sleep, praying more, listening to podcasts, just continually having to come to God and trust that even when I can't feel them, they are with me, watching over me. And my experience of life, having been a Christian for a long time, is that is exactly what they're doing. They are watching over me, whether I feel it or not. So I would say to you, if peace is something that you're struggling for at the moment, perhaps you're a bit worried about going back to school, then be encouraged by the words of Paul in Philippians 4, verse 6 to 7. He says, "Do not be anxious about anything, but in every situation, by prayer and petition, with thanksgiving, present your requests to God. And the peace of God, which transcends all understanding, will guard your hearts and your minds in Christ Jesus." Paul encourages us and instructs us to pray no matter what our circumstances are, no matter how anxious or worried we are, bring those things to God, and that we will receive God's peace, his shalom, his eirenne. But the story of God's peace, his plan for peace, doesn't end there. It's not just for us, for our own wholeness, completeness, well-being, safety, security, and right relationship with him and others. But it's for more than that. Paul in Ephesians chapter 4 verse 3 says that we are to make every effort to keep the unity of the Spirit through the bond of peace. And again in Colossians chapter 3:15, let the peace of Christ rule your hearts, since as members of one body you are called to peace. In Hebrews 12:14 the writer says, make every effort to live in peace with everyone. We are not just given God's peace for our own well-being, but we are to be bringers of peace, shalom, eirenne, to those around us, to our world. So wherever we go, we are to be agents of peace, bringing Jesus, Prince of Peace, with us. So how are you doing at the moment? Particularly thinking about returning to school this week. How are you? I know some of you are so excited just to see your mates after so long. Whereas others of you will be quite apprehensive about what school will look like with all the changes and all the kind of safety restrictions in place. And some of you will be feeling a mixture of both, excited and a little anxious or apprehensive. Pray for God's peace to fill you now. Take some time to just receive God's presence and reassurance and comfort, to know that you have Him watching over you, that you are safe with Him, that He goes before you. And also, why don't you pray that you would be the bringer of peace into your school? That you would bring peace, the presence of Jesus, to your peer relationships, to your friendships, with your classmates and with the staff at school. I'm sure all the schools right now could do with a whole heap load of peace. So if you want to do that now, if you want to pray, what I've done is I've created a peace-themed worship playlist on Spotify. You're welcome. So if you want a soundtrack to your prayers, you can go find that now using the link below, or perhaps you just want to use the worship music to help you come into the presence of God. Let me finish by praying this blessing over you from Numbers chapter 6, verses 24 to 26. May the Lord bless you and keep you. The Lord make His face shine on you and be gracious to you. The Lord turn His face towards you and give you peace. Amen.